Welcome to Johannesburg, a city of stark contrasts and inequalities. In this introductory video, we will take you on a visual journey through the streets, neighborhoods, and housing developments that define this complex tapestry of this vibrant metropolis. Here, amidst the towering skyscrapers and bustling streets, lie pockets of exclusivity and spatial separation. Gated communities with their manicured lawns and private amenities represent a symbol of privilege and affluence. On the other hand, public housing areas, often located in the outskirts and lacking adequate infrastructure, paint a picture of struggle and marginalization. But the story runs deeper than what meets the eye. These contrasting landscapes are rooted in a history of apartheid, a system of segregation and discrimination on racial grounds. Since the dawn of democracy in 1994, South Africa has embarked on a journey to dismantle the legacy of apartheid and foster inclusivity. However, as our research reveals, the reality is far from an ideal post-apartheid city.
Welcome Dover, baby. Whoa, stop some samala. Kitanda no muvuta, baby. Yo, yo. Love you, wami bo, uwe mama. Whoa. Wamchinda kukumala. Nafana ne self-raising. Nama kwali strati. Nafana no mapala. We mama, we love you, we baby. Whoa.
Studies and reports indicate that public housing in Johannesburg is often constructed in outlying areas, far from essential services, employment opportunities, and public transportation. This spatial exclusion perpetuates a cycle of limited access to resources and economic opportunities for those residing in these communities.
Samrela samsela, tu samibo. Sabjiga matireni, hawe mama. Whoa. Welcome Dover, baby. Stop some samala. Kitanda no muvuta, baby. Yo, yo. Wambambele tuze, no wambuze koli mama.
But behind the statistics, there are people, families, and stories. These individuals living within these communities navigate challenges and strive for a better future. Their resilience and aspirations are the driving force behind our exploration today. As we delve deeper into this topic, we will engage with experts, planners, and community members to shed light on the issues of gated communities and public housing provision in Johannesburg. Together, we will uncover the complexities, spark conversations, and explore potential pathways towards a more equitable and inclusive urban fabric.
Wamambeletuza Wambuze koli mama Esola Wambege sifube We mama Tambola mle Kentucky Samrela sami Samrela samselana Tututu sami Sochige matireni Hawa mama Welcome Dover baby Stop samsamala Itanda no muvuta baby Yo Yo
Today we are joined by Tashio Vala, who is an honors student from the University of Witwatersrand, and we will be having quite an interesting discussion relating to gated communities and public housing provision within Johannesburg. So, our first question for the day, Tashio, is can you provide us with an overview of the historical background of policies that relate to gated communities or housing provision in Johannesburg?
So, thank you, Norm Pumalena, for having me here. So, if I think of housing policies, or rather say public housing policies, it would be the RDP program, which is mostly looked at accommodating low-income earners. But recently, what I found out is that that policy has been scrapped.
Yeah.
And we've now moved to the BNG, but also to an extent that hasn't succeeded as gated communities have grown, but in terms of, and to be more specific, the gated communities are looking at a particular market. They're looking at more of the upper class market. They're looking at mostly those type of particular classes.
So, Tashil, we hear about the policies background that you have been filling us in about. But what would you define the current trends and dynamics of gated communities and public housing in Johannesburg? How would you define that or describe the trends?
So I do believe that most gated communities, once again, like I said, looking at particular classes, and that is because of private stakeholders. That is because of they're more interested in those types of developments. So the thing is that public housing does end up being neglected. And the thing is that it's mostly the marginalized groups that are not accommodated for. So it does represent this inequality. In the case of developments, yes, it's still located in peripheries. That is because it's still accommodating low-income earners, and the thing is that it's looking at marginalized groups, and also sometimes there's this prejudice between upmarkets and low-income earners, where there's this where upmarkets, they want everything to be near to them, but when it comes to low-income earners, they're very against it. And it's also, we have to think of like the hierarchies, in that upmarkets do want that.
So when we are allowing for more neighborhoods that are within Johannesburg to close off their roads, and at the same time we're producing social housing that is still at the periphery, so it goes against the policies that you were talking about, then what kind of cities are we promoting?
That's a very good question. The thing is that if we look at the city of Johannesburg, for example, we would never promote the CBD, for instance, in the way it looks on the ground. We will look at it like in the air because it looks much better. But if we had to promote cities, it would we will look at Sandton City and Waterfall cities, because those are it represents it's contemporary, it's new, it's showing that that in terms of urban centers, that those are the attraction. So because you would never see how decayed townships like the CBD on the ground. Many people would not want to promote that because there's this thing of wanting attraction, and that's an issue that some cities that are poorly managed, they and neglected, therefore those cities aren't able to be fixed. So what happens is that when it comes to promoting cities, it's mostly looking at what's new, what's clean, what's being taken care of, and that is unfortunately they look at the art market, and Sandton City and Waterfall is that.
Okay. I'm glad that you brought up the point about Waterfall, because it leads to my next question, which is, what are some of the key factors that contribute to the spatial exclusion and segregation that results from the trends that you just described? So from Waterfall, what are the key factors that actually promotes inequality and exclusion? And from creating more social housing, that is, for example, our video showcases a new social housing that was developed as an extension of Soweto, which is called Lufereng. But the location is still within the peripheries. It's still segregated from the city, because I think we spent about an hour on the road trying to make our way there. And that is where we're trying to house people, where we then expect these people to be able to find jobs for themselves and make a living. But we're putting them in a space where they aren't able to do that unless they travel for an hour to get to the city. So what are some key factors that these gated communities and the current trend of the way we've been providing public housing in South Africa, what are some key factors that you think are actually producing more inequality and leading to more exclusion and more segregation in our communities?
So the thing I would like to touch on is that it's private investments, mainly going back. Private investments have a particular interest. They're more looking at business and market-led developments. So they implement these types of development, not considering the possible that there is going to be this further inequality. Let's just think about Waterfall and Sandton. They're right next to each other, and those are two now competing cities. But in between those two cities, we also have Alex, and that is also an example of how there's this spatial inequality. We have this decaying township. We have this township that's lacking the urban management. It's lacking all the urban congestions. So the thing is that there's this also, in a way, there's a struggle of how do we convince private stakeholders to deal with the problems? How do we make it feasible? And that's something now we have to think about. Looking at Soweto, mostly those people, there's still that spatial inequality there, where yes, there's been inclusionary housing developed, but those people are there's also where they work could be much like they are excluded, as if there's not enough opportunity within Soweto for them to earn an income.
What would you say is the main reason why we are continuing or encouraging these trends outside of private gains, outside of if you see a gated community, even as people will be thinking, "Ooh, I aspire to live there," but you're not actually thinking about how that space actually affects the next person, right? So that's maybe one of the reasons why we continue to promote and live in gated communities. But as planners, okay, that was like the perspective of a normal person. You might want to live there because it looks good.
It's desire, yes.
Exactly, but as planners, why do we continue to then allow for more gated communities to be developed?
So that really goes, it's also, so if we have to move away from private stakeholders and private investments, then it's looking at our government and their interests. So the problem is that South Africa does face issues of corruption, it faces the issues of neglecting its people. So yes, in a way we can blame them to some extent, saying that they haven't really fulfilled the requirements of delivering sustainability to poor people. So that's the thing, like we really need to see that corruption does play a role in why many people are still living in poor living conditions.
So you're saying the main reason such development is still being promoted is that we don't really do what we say, or we don't really promote what we say within our policies because of the enforcement that is in place, as they then have their own particular goals about what they want to do, which might go against what policy has to say. So then, as a planner, where does that leave you?
The thing is that planners, we don't really have much power. We can look at policies, we can look at all the policies that's been drawn up by a particular department, and the thing is that we can align our plans with those policies, but then again, it's also we just drawing that plan. When it comes to actual development, it's not really up to us. We can propose, we can create and invent, but it's also the challenge of us not putting. We don't get that chance of like ensuring that development will take place. That goes back to the interests of external parties, and the thing is that yes, they can create these plans, these spatial development frameworks, but it not necessarily like be supported by municipalities. So it does like bring that frustration of being a planner, but in a way that in order for them to gain a living, it's through supporting the government if that's their opportunity.